Venice in 1500 stood as the jewel of the Mediterranean. The city controlled trade routes that connected Europe to the east. Merchants grew wealthy beyond imagination. The Venetian Republic commanded a naval empire that stretched across the Adriatic and into the eastern Mediterranean. Venice in 1500 stood as the jewel of the Mediterranean. The city controlled trade routes that connected Europe to the east. Merchants grew wealthy beyond imagination. The Venetian Republic commanded a naval empire that stretched across the Adriatic and into the eastern Mediterranean. The arsenal formed the beating heart of Venetian power. This massive shipyard employed thousands of workers. They could build a warship in a single day. The production line moved with precision that would not be seen again until the Industrial Revolution. Galleys rolled out of the arsenal and into the lagoon. They carried Venetian power across the waves. Trade fueled everything. Spices from the east passed through Venetian hands. Silk, pepper, cinnamon, cloves. These goods arrived in Venice and spread across Europe. Venetian merchants grew rich on the market. They built palaces along the Grand Canal. These marble facades declared their wealth to the world. The government operated through a complex system designed to prevent tyranny. The Great Council consisted of noble families. They elected the Doge, the symbolic leader of the Republic. But real power lay distributed across councils and committees. The Council of 10 investigated threats to the state. The Senate managed foreign policy and war. This system created stability that lasted for centuries. Religion and politics intertwined completely. St. Mark's Basilica stood as the spiritual center of Venice, but it served political purposes too. The Doge appeared in public ceremonies that blended religious ritual with displays of state power. Venice claimed independence from both Pope and Emperor. The Republic answered to no one. Art flourished in this wealthy environment. Painters like Titian, Tintoretto, and Veronese created masterpieces for churches and palaces. Their canvases captured the light that bounced off the water and illuminated Venice. Music filled the churches. Composers wrote for the ospedali, charitable institutions that trained orphan girls in music. These concerts attracted visitors from across Europe. But darkness gathered on the horizon. New trade routes threatened Venetian dominance. Portuguese ships had found the way around Africa to India. They brought spices directly to Europe. This bypassed Venice completely. The Ottoman Empire expanded westward. Turkish fleets challenged Venetian control of the eastern Mediterranean. Wars drained the treasury. The Golden Age began to tarnish. The 17th century brought crisis after crisis. Venice fought endless wars against the Ottomans. The War of Candia lasted 24 years. Venice poured money and men into defending Crete from Turkish conquest. The island fell in 1669. Thousands of Venetians died. The treasury emptied. The Republic had defended Crete not for profit, but for pride. That pride cost everything. Trade continued to slip away. Dutch and English merchants built their own networks. They traded directly with the East. Venice became a middleman that nobody needed. The flow of goods slowed. Merchant fortunes shrank. Palaces that had taken decades to build began to crumble from neglect. Plague struck in 1630. The disease arrived on ships from the east. It spread through the crowded city with devastating speed. Bodies piled in the streets. The living could not bury the dead fast enough. Mass graves appeared on the islands of the lagoon. When the plague finally burned itself out, it had killed 1/3 of Venice's population. 46,000 people died. The city built the Church of Santa Maria della Salute as thanks for deliverance. But Venice never fully recovered. The social fabric began to fray. Noble families that had governed for centuries lost their wealth.
Some sold their titles to wealthy commoners. The Great Council expanded to include families that would have been excluded generations earlier. This diluted the power of the old aristocracy, but it also revealed desperation. The Republic needed money more than it needed tradition. Daily life changed dramatically. The arsenal that once built ships now stood mostly silent. Workers who had passed skills from father to son found no work. The naval power that had defined Venice for centuries faded. The Republic could no longer afford to maintain a great fleet. Ships rotted in the lagoon. The mainland territories became more important. Venice controlled cities across northern Italy: Verona, Padua, Brescia. These cities paid taxes that kept the Republic functioning. Venetian nobles bought estates on the mainland. They became landlords instead of merchants. Architect Andrea Palladio designed elegant villas for these nobles. The villas symbolized a shift in Venetian identity. The sea people were becoming land people. Women's lives reflected broader changes. Wealthy families faced a problem. Dowries had become enormously expensive. A family with multiple daughters could face financial ruin trying to marry them all off. The solution was brutal but practical. Only one daughter would marry. The others entered convents. These women took vows not from religious calling, but from economic necessity. The convents of Venice filled with reluctant nuns from noble families. For women outside the nobility, options remained limited. Some worked in the silk industry that still operated in Venice. Others served in wealthy households. The poorest turned to prostitution. Venice had long tolerated prostitution as a necessary evil. Courtesans occupied a strange position in society. The most successful became wealthy and cultured. They hosted salons and patronized artists, but they remained outside respectable society.
Crime became more visible. The Council of Ten had always operated in secrecy. They investigated conspiracies and punished traitors. But now, ordinary crime increased. Theft, violence, fraud. The authorities struggled to maintain order. The famous Venetian spy network that had protected the Republic for centuries began to turn inward. Spies watched citizens instead of foreign enemies. Yet culture continued to flourish in unexpected ways. Theater became wildly popular. Playwright Carlo Goldoni created comedies that mocked the pretensions of declining nobility. His plays showed servants outwitting masters. Audiences loved these inversions of the social order. Opera houses opened across the city. Music remained one area where Venice still led Europe.
The 18th century brought a strange transformation. Venice could no longer compete as a commercial or military power, so it reinvented itself as the playground of Europe. The city became synonymous with pleasure, excess, and decadence. Carnival expanded from a few days to months. Masked revelry filled the streets. Gambling houses opened everywhere. Casinos became big business. The mask became the symbol of 18th century Venice. Wearing a mask granted anonymity and freedom. Social rules relaxed behind the disguise. Nobles mingled with commoners. Men and women pursued affairs without scandal. The bauta, a white mask with a protruding chin, became ubiquitous during Carnival. This mask allowed the wearer to eat and drink without removal, perfect for endless parties.
Casanova embodied this era perfectly. Born in Venice in 1725, Giacomo Casanova became famous across Europe. He was a gambler, a seducer, a spy, and a writer. His memoirs painted Venice as a city dedicated to pleasure. He described elaborate seductions, daring escapes, and constant gambling. Casanova's Venice was a city where anything could happen, where social constraints melted away. This image attracted tourists from across Europe. The Grand Tour became fashionable among wealthy young Europeans. They traveled to Italy to see classical ruins and Renaissance art. Venice became an essential stop. These tourists wanted to experience the legendary Carnival. They wanted to gamble in the Ridotto, the state-run casino. They wanted affairs and adventures. Tourism brought money. Venice welcomed these visitors and catered to their desires. But beneath the masks and parties, decay accelerated. The government became ossified.
The same families held the same positions generation after generation. Innovation died. The Republic made no serious attempt to modernize. While other European states built modern armies and reformed administrations, Venice clung to medieval structures. The arsenal employed fewer and fewer workers. The skills of shipbuilding faded. Buildings crumbled from lack of maintenance. The city literally began to sink. The wooden pilings that supported everything rotted. Salt water seeped into foundations. Palaces developed cracks. Some collapsed entirely. Venice was eating itself from within.
Artists captured this melancholy beauty. Canaletto painted precise views of Venice that sold to English tourists. His paintings showed crumbling grandeur. Antonio Vivaldi composed music that captured both joy and sadness. His Four Seasons became famous across Europe. But Vivaldi died poor in Vienna. Venice had not appreciated its own genius. The French Revolution changed everything. Revolutionary ideas spread across Europe. In 1797, Napoleon's army approached Venice. The Republic faced a choice: fight or surrender. The Great Council debated. The old men who governed Venice knew they could not win. The Republic had no army capable of stopping France. On May 12, 1797, the Great Council voted to dissolve itself. After more than 1,000 years, the Venetian Republic ended. Napoleon entered Venice as a conqueror. He looted the city systematically. The bronze horses of St. Mark's Basilica were shipped to Paris. Paintings were torn from churches. The Doge's crown and robes were melted down for their gold. Napoleon stripped Venice of its treasures and its dignity. He treated the once mighty Republic as a defeated province. The French gave Venice to Austria in a treaty. The Austrians ruled Venice as a conquered territory. The proud Republic became just another piece of the Habsburg Empire. The government structures that had lasted centuries vanished. The Council of Ten ceased to exist. The arsenal became a mere naval depot. The transformation was complete. Yet Venice survived. The city that had risen from a swamp endured conquest. It could no longer rule itself. It could no longer command fleets or control trade. But it remained beautiful. It remained unique. The palaces still lined the Grand Canal. The canals still wound through the islands. The impossible city on the water adapted once again. Venice became a symbol. Poets and artists were drawn to its faded glory. Lord Byron swam in the Grand Canal and wrote poems about Venetian decline. John Ruskin studied its architecture and mourned its fall. Henry James set novels in its decaying palaces. Venice transformed from a living republic into a romantic myth. The city of masks and carnival, of art and intrigue, of glory and decay. This became Venice's final identity. Not a power, but a memory. Not a state, but a dream. The Republic died, but the city lived on. Resilient, adaptive, undeniably haunting.